Pennsylvania lawmakers have written a letter to Secretary of State Antony Blinken. They are urging him to bring American teacher Marc Fogel home. 12 months ago, Fogel was arrested with cannabis while traveling into Russia. He was found guilty of committing large-scale drug smuggling and given a 14-year sentence. The lawmakers' letter to Secretary Blinken said in part, quote, "Although he may not carry the notoriety of a celebrity WNBA athlete, we believe it is essential the Biden administration work to bring Mr. Fogel safely home to his family. Brittany Griner's wife received a call from President Joe Biden, but the family of Mr. Fogel has struggled to even receive a response from the State Department." The letter also urged the State Department to immediately classify Fogel as wrongfully detained. My next guest spearheaded that letter. Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Guy Reschenthaler joins me. Good evening, sir.
Thanks for having me on, Greta.
Sir, why is it that Mr. Fogel is not classified as wrongfully detained? And I might add that on July 26th, the State Department press spokesman was asked about it and didn't give much of an answer to it, in my opinion. But why isn't he classified wrongfully detained?
I think the administration, the State Department, was just not taking this seriously. Perhaps it wasn't on the center of their radar, so to speak. But thankfully, a professional athlete, a celebrity, got caught in similar circumstances. And now the administration is focused on this. Now the national media is focused on it. So while the focus is on Griner, we should also look at Mr. Fogel, of course, Mr. Whelan as well. But if there's any prisoner swap, Greta, Mr. Fogel, a teacher from southwestern Pennsylvania who was there teaching history to English-speaking students, he should be prioritized in this prisoner exchange along with Whelan.
And I think so, too. But I mean, wrongfully detained sort of ups the ante in terms of what the State Department is willing to do for you or not do for you. Mr. Whelan is also classified as wrongfully detained, like Brittany Griner is. Mr. Fogel, I mean, but it's, look, the classification, and good for her. I want her home. We've done a lot of shows on trying to get Brittany Griner home, but it took all of about 10 seconds. And I don't know how fast it took for Whelan, but it doesn't take a whole lot of time. And Fogel's been in custody longer to say that he's wrongfully detained. So I suspect that, one of two things. Either there's more to the story that we're not being told, or the State Department is just, has just ignored it or whatever. But we're not getting a straight story, is what I do know.
Well, Greta, let me push back on that a little bit. I think that he is unlawfully detained and he's a political prisoner. Although he did bring medical marijuana into Russia, he said it was clearly an accident. But if you want to see just why he's a political prisoner, look at this disparity in the sentencing. He was sentenced to 14 years hard labor. That is a sentence that's typically reserved for hardcore narco traffickers, hardcore drug smugglers. That's not Mr. Fogel. He had enough for maybe, 12, 15 uses of this medical marijuana. So it's completely disproportional. And I think the Russians set up this sentence so they could use Mr. Fogel as a chip in a political negotiation with the United States.
Except that But when they gave Fogel the 14 years, they had no idea that Brittany Griner was going to show up in February. So I mean, I don't know to what extent that was, except for of course the Russians want Victor Bout, and so maybe it'll be a 3-for-1. But now the Russians are asking for someone else, for another person who's not even in U.S. custody, but's in German custody.
Well, I think to go back to your point about the Russians not knowing about Griner, if they get any American in prison, it's a high value prisoner because they know that in a negotiation or any kind of prisoner swap, the Americans will try to get the Americans back. So I don't think they needed to predict Griner. I think, though, that if you look at the way the media has focused on Griner as opposed to Mr. Fogel, shows you the skewed nature of this, where the media in the Biden administration has placed a pro athlete because she has celebrity above this teacher from Middle America. So it shows their priorities.
Oh, well, I'm glad that she's able to do that with her misfortunes, to put a spotlight on Americans held overseas. I know that I've done a lot of shows historically on Americans held overseas. Lots of times it's because there are other stories out there. But I do hope that Mr. Fogel gets a lot of attention now. I hope he comes home as well as Whelan and Brittany Griner. But in some ways, her misfortune is going to help a lot of other Americans. Congressman, I'm taking the last word on that. Thank you, sir, for joining me.
Thanks, Greta. Take care.